I'm Will Hedrick.
And I'm Jordan Schaffer.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps, a book club podcast.
Now the official Witcher podcast.
The official Witcher podcast. We're going through the whole saga, and then the games, and the Netflix series. We're never reading anything else over again. Only The Witcher.
And that's okay. We're selling out. The Witcher has bought this. This is sponsored by and brought to you by The Witcher.
By The Witcher. Not even like the author or CD Projekt Red or Netflix, any of the entities, just the property itself.
That'd be pretty big though, right? If like the whole entity is like a company called The Witcher. Just the whole idea of it. One thing that you were saying like right before we started is just like this book definitely feels for sure like it's not
like it was always intended to be part of a series, and maybe at some point it was, the first two books were a single book or something like that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, again, this book is only like 300 and something pages.
Yeah. And I mean, they did come out every year, like 93, 94, 95.
Yeah, for the first couple of books. Yeah, absolutely. So it's, there's not going to be like any real sense of closure in this book except for like maybe the closing of one small arc. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely always had the intention of going into the next book without, any, question or vague, when a cliffhanger or anything like that.
Yeah. I feel like kind of in the little reading we did this week too was he sort of went back to his roots of like writing the different story sections and like kind of having them be not time skips, but like different story beats, like in different stories, just because, like our two parties, our one party turns into two. And and then Geralt was doing his own thing, like a new mission while hearing from Ciri and doing other stuff. So it kind of felt like, hey, we're off monster hunting again. Like this is a little fun chapter story, but it's obviously with intent to continue on this story. But I just felt like it was a little bit sort of like the old one. Like we got a little bit of like a flash of like, here's some monster hunting. Now let's come back and
right.
Obviously, this book's not called like the Monster Hunters, but it feels just like a fun little monster like hunting thing. And like every time we go back to The Witcher, he's just got so much back knowledge, and it's just fun. Like when he was lecturing that person, kind of cocky.
Oh, the
scholar. Right?
Yeah, he's a scholar. He's a tutor at the college there in Oxenfurt. Mm-hmm.
What do you think that's a play on?
Maybe
Oxford.
Another college. Yeah, it is literally where the whatever they call it. I think they call it the university.
Yeah, the university or like the academy, something like that.
But it's the only, or at least it's the most prestigious place of learning in this small corner of the world.
And where our buddy Dandelion went.
Mm-hmm.
And taught.
He's a Oxenfurt alumni.
Yeah, a professor. Well, he's not anymore, but he was for a year, right?
Yeah, after he graduated, he apparently lectured for a year.
That was a fun little tidbit that like obviously we didn't. Well, I guess we needed it so that it could justify him having all these secret routes that he memorized. Like Like if Fred and
being
George went back to
Hogwarts,
then it'd be like, oh, well, they got it,
Right, yeah, if we started a story with Fred and George without ever having known that they went to Hogwarts.
Or even their kids.
Just as adults. Right,
like little Fred or something, and then, I guess it wouldn't be both of them. Oh.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway.
Which one's the one that died? Fred, right? I always forget, and I feel like I'm a fake Harry Potter fan.
Yeah, me too. I do. I also always forget. Yeah, whatever.
In any case. Yeah, I mean, they're, at least for a couple of chapters, it does seem like it was sort of like, oh, well, Geralt's just back to adventuring. But it is, once we get everybody back together, revealed that it was all part of this continuing storyline. He had taken on that job on the raft,
right,
in an effort to lure out this Reince guy who is the one who tortures Dandelion in the beginning of our first section of reading and all that. Because whoever this Reince character is, he's after Cirilla, and that's gathered the attention of the two kingdoms, as well as the Circle of Wizards, or not the Circle, the Brotherhood of Wizards. Circle of Wizards is the wizard organization in the Dragon Age series. But yeah, so, you know, all these parties are very interested in Cirilla, probably because she's a source that we talked about last week. So that's obviously what the sort of center point, at least for a large portion of this saga, is Cirilla and whatever her purpose is.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't think she'll get her own like book or anything, right? Like maybe she'll get a book with like more parts dedicated to her than the other. But I feel like through and through, it's mostly Geralt that we're getting the story through.
Mm-hmm. And, that's because Cirilla is a child and up to this point incapable of progressing the story on her own.
Right. Yeah. I guess maybe now she could progress the story a little more on her own, but just like being at the university or whatever. But I don't know.
Well, she's not even at university. She's at a temple.
Yeah, the temple. Sorry,
but,
studying.
Yeah, she's getting some studying
but not the university we were just talking about. You're right.
So I mean, it has to progress through Geralt, and her being his ward, is how it still ties to her. But he's got all these connections with the life that he's lived and the people that he is friends with. Or that are at least in his circle, all have their own connections as well. And so all the worldly politics can happen through these characters, through Geralt, that progresses the story and what is going to end up being a story that seems to pivot around Ciri and what happens with her and what she means for the world. But yeah, I mean, it does have to go through Geralt.
I do like him being sort of our source. No, he's like our information hub. I like learning everything through him. He's always been like this vast thing of knowledge. So getting more and more through him is kind of cool. I don't know. What'd you think of this section? Was it like exciting for you still, even though like it felt like it was just laying groundwork for the?
It's definitely overall... slower, and like halfway through or after chapter 4. Going into chapter 5 was when I was like, well, this book in and of itself isn't really going to close anything, like we talked about at the top, which is fine. If anything, that will just make it easier to quickly transition into the second book and be able to stick with it and read it, without dropping it and forgetting about it and that sort of thing. But then once I knew that, I was like, okay, so everything can progress slowly because that's the intention. It's going to go into whatever's next. It's then also going to go into whatever's next because I'm sure Time of Contempt is probably only about 300, 400 pages as well. And so it doesn't bother me that it's going at this pace now that I recognize that it's going to be doing so very purposefully.
It does seem like it always brings back like a little exciting taste, even if it is like a lot more just... story that's being like the groundwork for the story is being laid, but he'll go and fight a monster while he's doing it. So it's like, okay, we're still getting that, and that's always exciting, but
it's still very much a world of danger.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like we're just, okay, let's deal with politics and nothing's going to happen. And we're just going to, it'll be letters corresponding back and forth. And it's just like, it's action with a letter. And then,
right.
But has it made you want to play The Witcher?
Yeah, it makes me think about it. I can't right now.
I'm too invested.
There are other things that I need to finish. Like I'm playing through the most recent God of War right now because I know I can bust that down in 15 to 20 hours. So, and then after that, there's other things to do. But it is getting me hyped back up for the world and everything.
Yeah.
I'll be excited to continue reading. I'll be excited for the Netflix series.
Oh yeah, I am excited for that.
So at some point I will get back to the third Witcher game. I'm not going to go back to the first and second, though I may watch the videos on them again just to refresh, but I am excited to get back to it at some point.
Yeah. Do you think that they're going to make a fourth game?
Possibly.
Yeah. I feel like with all the hype and like the build up for like a new season, or like not a new season, a brand like a brand new story, like a TV adaptation, and then they must have heard that we were doing a podcast, and then
right.
And then the games, and like all these new stories. I feel like they're either gonna. I don't think you'll write a new book, but I think that it would be another game or something.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know how the third game ends.
Oh, good point.
So there is a potential snag would be if everybody dies, then what do we do at that point?
Yeah. Is Siri in the games? Am I allowed to know
that? I don't know that I want to say.
I don't know that I want to say. So.
At least not on the show. If you want me to tell you afterwards, I'll tell you.
Okay.
But it is kind of weird reading the books after knowing as much about the games as I do, though, like I said, I don't know everything because I haven't finished the third one. Because it does sort of color the way that I look at different characters.
Yeah.
Like this, the Dijkstra character, the spy master for the Redanian state, he is in the games, and so the way that I look at him is different than if this was my introduction to him, which is fine. It just kind of changes the way that I look at different things, which is my fault for not reading the books first. But and probably doesn't really matter all that much. But generally speaking, I'm kind of a purist for the way that stories be experienced, and so looking back on everything, I would rather that I had read the books first. But oh well, what can I do at this point?
Yeah, that's funny. I actually, I feel like I like having that kind of knowledge. Like with Game of Thrones, I went in after having watched like 3 or 4 seasons. Like I had a lot of background story already built in my head. I had these preconceived notions about characters, and then just getting all the extra details, like, or waiting for something to happen that I knew was coming. Like I would get goosebumps, like leading up to it, or like, oh, like I know why that line is so epic because it means so much to whoever for whatever, and then I also know that it means this much to whoever's feeling it in response. And I guess I'm excited for that phase whenever I get there with this series, because I know it's not going to just be a once through. I'm not going to be done after we finish this book, because there's just going to be so many loose ends and loose ends that have already been tied.
Right?
Like the story's done, so I don't have to wait. Like we're still waiting for Game of Thrones or anything. But like, I don't know. So I mean, I started re-listening to these 2 chapters just today at work, and I don't know, maybe that's also why I like it too, is because like if I zone out and then zone back in, it's like, oh, I know exactly what's going on still, and like, oh, I can catch these new little details. Yeah, I guess I'm also like self-conscious sometimes when like I hear something for the first time, or I read something for the first time, like I never want to come off dumb, like I didn't understand, or like I didn't get what, or like maybe like I don't want it to look like, oh, he had to read that 2 or 3 times just to comprehend what that sentence was, even that, because I don't know, I guess I see other people like online or we talk, and then I'm just like, man, it doesn't take other people 2 or 3 times to actually really retain what it is, and the more and more like we do this, like I'm realizing it takes a lot for me to retain stuff and to be able to regurgitate it back out. Like I'll have listened to the story and I'll remember like all these big story beats, or I'll have even even with the Lost Causes of Bleak Creek, like when I read the first half of it, I had all these story beats and stuff, and just I still felt like I needed to like reread it or like go over it slower and just like really get all the details. I guess just too, because like I was saying, like we're talking about it and I don't want to sound like I don't understand or I'm dumb, but like that, like I don't know, I guess it's hard to put into words, but yeah,
I see what you're saying.
So I guess there's a bit of like a guilty pleasure to like having knowing the whole story, or at least knowing the beats of all the story, and then going back through and getting the details that I kind of enjoy. So I guess I'm a little envious of you, like for that, because you have this background knowledge. You like when they say a name, you know what it means, rather than like you're building, like it goes into this character book that you're building in your head of like, okay, now these things mean this, and I don't know, that's kind of cool. So like when new things, like just relating different parts of the story to other parts of the story, it's just, I mean, just with how good you are with names and stuff, I doubt it would have helped you understand it any better. But I feel like with me, just going in with background, it would have made it easier to make connections, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not really like making the story any less good. I still really want to get into it, and like it makes me want to play the games, or at least learn about them. And I can't do too deep of a dive into the Witcher wiki without spoiling things. But even that being said, too, if I wasn't reading this with you, I probably would have already. Just because spoilers don't really bother me too much. For the same reason, like I said, it doesn't bother me having the story and then getting more info.
Well, it's just the way that you enjoy intaking stories.
It's kind of weird. And I don't know.
I don't think it's totally weird, because you wouldn't be. I don't think that you'd be able to, like you did with Game of Thrones or other things maybe that you've read, dive into different wikis and stuff like that, or see what people were talking about on forums if there weren't other people who did the same thing.
Okay.
Because
makes sense.
I think that unless you were then, one of the first people to be implementing that sort of idea, at least on the internet, I think that there's probably a ton of other people that do the same thing. I mean, that's the reason that fan theories exist, or part of the reason that fan theories get the sort of popularity that they get these days on TV, probably more than anything thanks to Game of Thrones, is because there are people who want to figure everything out, look at every detail that there is, and they're trying to, like, the whole, like, the R plus L equals J thing for Game of Thrones. Like, people were seeking out that knowledge before they had gotten to the point in the books where they could have come up with that themselves, That's why it was such a big discussion. If it was only a discussion happening between the people who had finished the books and then poured over them a million times years before the show started, then we wouldn't know about that theory, right?
Right.
But it was popularized because it made it to the masses, and the masses had no chance of figuring that out because they hadn't read everything, And so I think that mentality permeates maybe a little bit further than you thought. But there's also, I mean, for every person that's in that camp, there's also, a million people in a million different other camps of how they prefer to take in stories or whatever. Like I said at the top, not at the top, but not too long ago in this conversation, I am a little purist in how I want to take in stories, and that I want to take it in order, and I want to take it in the way that the creator intended, or at least that maybe I perceive intended. Like right now I'm thinking about starting this light novel series that is written sort of out of order, and it's just like super confusing, and I've looked up on like guides on like how to read it, and you can read it in like a storyline order, or you can read it in the order that the novels were published. And so it's a little daunting trying to figure out what I think I should read, but I'm probably just going to read it in the way that they were published because I assume that's the way that the author intended them to be read.
Right.
So, and I think that part of my intention to read or intake stories in that manner lends itself to my attention to detail as well. And so.
Yeah, you're really good at like all those little details and remembering and like piecing things together. It's very cool, like to talk to you and watch you figure stuff out. I mean, I don't even watch you figure it out. I just you've like got it figured out.
Well, I'm obsessed with being knowledgeable, so I think maybe that's just the way that I look at it, is that I find the negative way to view it. But I'm definitely obsessed with being knowledgeable, and that's why I think more than anything that I absorb, well, not even just absorb, but retain things like you were talking about. I have just a propensity for doing so.
Yeah, you've been like that for forever, since I can remember. For whatever reason, 10th grade is standing out really big in my mind. I feel like that's the first time we might have actually had to like, no, I think it must have been Mr. Schutz probably that I first started realizing that like, oh wow, Will, like I always knew, but like that was when it like kind of I guess blew my mind, because like
interesting.
Like he's remembering the small details that he wrote on the board and what he talked about, not like taking any notes. I don't know. It was cool. But wasn't there another story that we just went through that like that did something like that? Like it wasn't all in order. Oh, it was the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Oh,
that one hopped around with different stories and was fun to kind of piece together, having different timelines and not really knowing.
That was such a cool book.
That was a cool book, and as you were saying, like this light novel series that you were looking into, I was like, I wonder what, because it made me think of like, what did we just do that was kind of like that, and for some reason I was thinking Good Omens, but I know that wasn't it. It must have been the 7.5 Deaths, but
yeah.
I mean, where do you think we're, I guess, going to go for the rest of this story? Like,
I mean, there's only 2 chapters left, a little over 100 pages. I think that it's not going to conclude whatever it is that's going on with this Rein's character, or Ryan's character. I don't know. How do they say it in the narration?
I can't remember.
It's spelt in a way that I would say Rience.
Rience.
It's Rience. So I'm going to call him Rience, but I think that whatever his deal is, whoever he works for, I don't think he works for Nilfgaard. I think that he's part of some as yet unknown faction. I think that the stuff, at least for now, between Temeria and Redania are kind of irrelevant, other than the fact that they can get in the way. I don't know. I think that Geralt gets forced to have to go back to the Temple of Melitel to try and get Ciri back. Before, the powers that be close in. Yennefer gets there first, does something, and then we go back to chasing Yennefer, which is kind of the permeating activity throughout the entire series.
Yeah.
As far as I understand it, is continually chasing after Yennefer.
Yeah. So is the Witcher series just a long like rom-com, or a long romantic story?
Almost, I suppose. One might say that that's what all stories are.
Yeah, just a long romance.
But it's definitely, and like we were talking about before recording, the overarching idea about this series, and I think I mentioned this last episode as well, is that it's all about destiny and fate, and whether that does or doesn't matter or is real, I suppose. And the Geralt's struggle with that idea. The story that happens through that vehicle is Geralt and Yennefer always being bound together forever, even if only symbolically, but being unable to do so because of their own self-fulfilling prophecies, which is part of that debate as to whether or not fate and destiny exist or matter. Because while they both want to be together, they both think that they can't be together, and so then force themselves to force each other away because they don't think that it's possible to be together, even though they both don't believe in destiny. So it's the same like cyclical idea over and over and over again, and that's overall, as I understand it, what happens continually throughout the story. The like greater, and that's like the greater story arc of the whole saga and the series. But what the story that actually happens in this series, again, I think is pivoted around Cirilla and what she means for the realm, and I guess potentially the world. But what we end up caring about is Geralt and Yennefer.
Yeah.
Sort of like in Harry Potter, it's about the three of them like surviving.
Yeah.
And they save the world in the process, but all we care about is their story,
That makes sense. I'm trying to think because I feel like I'm kind of just like that with Geralt. I only kind of care about his story as much as I really like Ciri. And I feel like chasing Yennefer doesn't necessarily mean that I necessarily need her story. Like I could just chase her through Geralt and I would be happy with it, because I do like her too as a character. She's fun. She brings in like a new element of just crazy. It seems like her and Geralt are kind of like, they're so opposite, but they're like two sides of the same coin. Like heads and tails are so different, but they're literally on the same quarter or whatever. So like they're I don't know. I feel like that just experiencing her through Geralt is good enough, but like, it pivots around Ciri. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like if I would be upset if like I didn't get anybody else. Like I like the first couple books, I guess, got me in the mindset of just like it's just like him monster hunting, even though we had recurring characters and like overarching themes and stuff. But he even said like he's gonna like at the end of time, like if like he considers himself kind of like, I don't want to say like irrelevant, but he kind of considers himself like never changing or whatever, because he said he'd be killing monsters even if there were no humans left to pay him. Like, that's just what he does. So I guess in my head it can always go back to just being like a monster hunting story, and that will always satisfy me, even if we don't like have to save the world or anything along with it. But I guess it is nice having the beginning of the story and seeing like, okay, there's some bigger themes to everything, not just monster hunting and learning fun fantasy things about this world. But,
right, yeah. Because at some point, like, a story can't be about just that.
Right, yeah, that would have no, yeah.
That's what
no
the prequels are for, is to give you
exactly.
those adventures and introduce you to the ideas and themes of this character and the characters around him, you know.
So what do you think the Blood of Elves is? Is that like, you think it'll be just like what we've been talking about through the story? Like
I think it's just
like
a reference to,
or...
it's like a double entendre, right? Where it talks about the growing threat of interracial war, you know, between the Squirtle and the human empires. What that means for the war between the human empires, because it becomes relatively evident that Nilfgaard is very likely the one setting the fire for the Squirtle to start this, you know, these raids on the southern kingdoms, and you know, all of that sort of stuff. Well, God, I can't remember a lot of the geography. But the other kingdom, you know, Redania and Temeria, and there's another one, and so they can at some point take advantage and try to take over those kingdoms again, which is something that we know that they had failed prior to these stories, or to this saga at least. No, I lost my train of thought for half a second because I was trying to think of something.
Well, I remember that our lead dwarf or whatever is saying that like.
The Blood of Elves thing, yeah.
Yeah, the elves didn't think humans would even be an issue. They just thought they'd kind of die off. And like, we'll just outlive them and come back whenever they're gone.
Right, yeah.
But obviously.
Well, that was definitely what they had sort of planned on, or that's what the elders wanted to do.
Yeah,
but then that one elf led the youngsters into revolt and, you know, failed. But I think it's the double entendre in the title there is it's about the literal blood of elves, the elves and other elderkin being used to weaken one area of human kingdom so that the greater threat of Nilfgaard can come in and, you know, change the face of the world. But then also talking about part of why Ciri is as pivotal as she is because she seems to have some greater strength of elder blood in her, and so that's what the title is about. It's about those two things, those two ideas.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it was, I guess, kind of clear that she had some hidden innate ability or whatever, but it kind of becomes a little more evident too when she gets like blood like pricked from one of those roses, like when she puts it on her, I don't want to say blouse because I don't think it was, but like on her shirt, right? And it cuts her, so she goes in like a little trance, right? She has a bit of a like a I don't know if it's like a foresight or whatever it is, but yeah, she sees the attack on the caravan or whatever. We know her to have already had visions and stuff like that before. But that one was a little bit more immediate, and she still knew what was going on, right? Like, yeah, she didn't lose her mind like she did. Yeah, the other ones were like full on trances, exactly. Yeah, whereas this was just like a vision or something. Okay. Now that would be kind of like, thinking back on it in hindsight, I feel like if I was Ciri, that would be kind of invigorating. Like, why did this? Like, was it her blood? Was it the rose? Like, like how did I see this vision and still remember when, like, I don't think nobody's told her about the other times. Excuse me, the other. I think that she's aware that something is happening during those time spans that she, you know, goes into the trance. So she certainly doesn't remember the trance, but she knows that she has these moments that she, you know, loses time, and that means something. I don't think that she's old enough to start, one, probably caring about a lot of it, and two, piecing it together, because she's only 13. Yeah. And so, like, to be like, well, I was able to remember this time. I don't know that that's necessarily even crossed her mind as like what does this mean sort of thing. I don't know that she's asking those questions yet. I know that, like, if I was 13 and I had any trace of magic, I'd be like, freaking out. Of course, I'm super.
Yeah, but you live in a world where that doesn't exist,
magic,
you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I just, with how eager and quick to learn she was with the Witcher stuff, I felt like maybe she would kind of think like, how can I, sharpen this new weapon or hone the ability of, because like even though it's not like she could use it to actively fight, like her ability of foresight, but that's obviously still a cool ability to, and I'd want to use it even if it's not like, see, like the ability of foresight wouldn't be like a great power for my personality. Like it wouldn't make the most sense probably if just like the world was blasted with magic, and then we all like grew into like our own abilities. Like I probably wouldn't have the ability of foresight, but if I happened to have it, it's not like I wouldn't still grab it and be like, all right, now I'm a future guy. Like I could see, like I would still grab it and try and harness that for the future. And I guess you're right. Being in a world of like no magic, it's still kind of hard for me to think, even in a world of magic, like if I had any trace of it, like I still wouldn't go crazy trying to learn every little bit about it. So I guess
it's also being suppressed by the Witchers around her that she was, training with. Anytime it happened, they were just like, well, we got to figure this out. But, we're not talking to her about it. Yeah. Well, I don't think they were even talking to her about it. They're just like, oh, you don't need to worry about that. That's not something that you need to worry about. You need to worry about training right now, that sort of thing. So it's like not only being suppressed, but then she also, even before coming into the Witchership, she, was raised knowing that she was Geralt's destiny.
Yes. Yeah. I remember now.
The queen had, told her about that, one day you're going to be taken away by this Witcher, and blah, blah, blah. She, in certain parts of sort of destiny was, talking about it. And as Geralt rode away, the last time before he finds her, she's like shouting at him, I'm your destiny, so she is raised with an expectation of, I do have something on about me. And so then to suddenly, whenever it was that she starts having the trances, and then whenever she pricks the blood and, gets the vision, I don't think that would have come as a shock to her at that point.
Yeah.
It would just be like, well, that's just the thing that I have. And at some point it either will or won't mean anything. Yeah.
And I mean, and if you have no control over it either, like, I guess you might not spend a lot of time worrying about it. Just like it'll happen when it happens. Like if I guess had a seizure or whatever, like I guess I might try to avoid situations that would put that on me. Seizure is a bad example, but like narcolepsy or something, like if I couldn't control when I fell asleep, that could kind of make sense, I guess, why then you wouldn't worry about it. Or then
it's just a part of your life.
It's just what happens. Yeah,
you didn't do anything that then gained you that ability. It just always was.
Yeah, like if I couldn't sleep and then somehow I got narcolepsy, I wouldn't then think like, how can I harness this ability to sleep whenever I want?
Right.
I pricked my finger last time and I fell asleep. I wonder if it has to do with my blood. And that would be the thing too, is like she wouldn't just start cutting herself to thinking like, oh, it must have been my blood that did it. You'd probably think like there must be something more because like the roses were symbolic too, and they meant something. And
well, there was also something happening.
Yes.
Yeah. Something happening to be seen is also part of the kind of dumbness of magic from the perspective of a non-magic world. Is like the only time that magic ever does anything is whenever there's something to be done. And so, like, of course, there's never a bit where somebody is like looking into the future or trying to find out what's going on in another land. And it's like, oh, he's eating fish. Like, there's never anything boring. It's always something is happening.
Yeah, like in Aragon when we read that the new Tales of Alagasia, when the little ship flew through. Like that's one of the few times that like magic was just kind of like happening, but like for no actual purpose. But in this story, it was written, or in that story, it was written as like a little bit of like a throw. Like
it was like an element of closure. Yeah.
And it's just like it's a fun little thing that would come through, but. Yeah, I can't think of any other situations when like magic would have like it would be happening but like didn't need to be.
Right, yeah.
God, I feel like I'd be so like if I had magic, I feel like even if it was hard to do, I would try to be so good at it that like I would have it be going all the time, so people didn't think that it was hard for me to do. You know, does that even make sense? I know that's
you
super douchey.
Be
too.
maintaining your muscle form like All Might.
Oh, there you go. That's a good way to say it. Like All Might. Good old All Might. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know if there's a whole lot to say, I guess, about this section. You know, other than what we have.
It's relatively mild, for sure, because it is just a chapter of, Geralt on the barge and, coming into contact with the Temerian guards, and then Dandelion running through Oxenfurt, talking with Dijkstra, and then catching back up with Geralt to let him know what's going on. And then the reveal of Philippa not only working for the Redanian court, but also having the idea of the court, the Brotherhood of Wizards, and then whatever this sort of ambiguous loyalty she has with Geralt, that she's sort of warning him before her duties to the Brotherhood and Redania. And so it's whatever that's about. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, that adds some kind of cool element to
Geralt
it.
seems to just bang every sorceress.
Nice.
That seems to be the deal.
Yeah, Dandelion even says it too.
Right.
It's like anytime Geralt argues with the sorceress,
It ends up in bed.
Yeah. Is he? He's handsome, probably, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't imagine a handsome guy, honestly. I imagine just like a freaking worn, rugged, tough guy that I guess would be considered handsome to probably a ton of people. But like in my head, it's
he's
just
certainly
like,
striking.
What does that mean? I guess. What is striking?
Like stands out.
That
elicits a response.
There you go, and that can be attractive just in its own right. I like that.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah, but not necessarily hot. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe not like not maybe handsome in a traditional sense.
Yeah, that's so funny because they even talk about like their Dandelion again.
He was talking about the student that he knew.
Yeah.
That she wasn't beautiful in a classical sense.
But she's the kind of beauty
pretty
you
in a way.
When the classical
it's a girl
beauty
next door
wears off.
story, you know.
Yeah. Is he the guy that wrote that? He started
the original Girl Next Door. Yeah, that's the ballad that he's considering whenever he's looking at her. Not a whole lot happens here. I don't know that there's too much to say, like you said.
Yeah, it's just nice. It's given more, just more to chew on, more fat to chew, so that you know more about the characters. And
a lot of this is like an exercise in dialogue than like big story beats happening, or at least sort of in the way that like a Tarantino film works, where it revolves around dialogue more than anything. Like if you think about the things that happen in Reservoir Dogs, there's three things that happen, and each time that those three things happen, it's like a matter of seconds. It's the heist, everybody dying, and then the end of the story. Those are the only things that happen.
Yeah.
And those things happen individually in like 2-second moments, but then everybody is talking about those things throughout the entire film. And it's really good. It's just not a conventional like a Michael Bay film where it's just fucking explosions and fights for, an hour and a half.
Yeah. And
the story is like, well, now we need to go over here to have another fight explosion.
Yeah, it's visually stimulating, not necessarily intellectually, or both.
And
but
this series is a little more akin to the, dialogue in between rather than anything.
Yeah, I was trying to think of. I thought I had something I could relate this to, but I don't remember what it was. Or I never got there. Like it was on the tip of my tongue, but
Well, I guess I'm about spent.
Yeah, I'm good. We covered most of everything.
Should we just read the next book for the next series, unless we can come up with something else?
I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to that, but
yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll let y'all know. I think it's likely that we're going to cover the show.
That'll be fun.
Depending on how Netflix puts that out. If it's weekly, although I doubt it, it'll be dumped at one go. then that'll be easier, hopefully. I hope it's not weekly. I don't see it being weekly, but
yeah. I mean, God, weekly, that would be tough. I'd like a big drop. I think that too. With the Witcher Netflix show, I have a feeling it's going to be just like it's going to be going over the books. So the way we're doing it, I think is smart, because I think we're going to finish this first book, and then the series is going to come out, and I have a feeling like season 1 is going to be book 1 or something. Like I don't want to say that it follows that exact formula, but
yeah, I think that it's going to cover the saga.
And I want to say that they're going to have the same ambition that the author did when he started this book, writing, like, knowing it was going to be a series. Like, I'm sure they're not starting the Witcher series hoping that it's done after season 1. They're
right,
pitching it and throwing it out there and wanting it to.
I assume so, because everybody is still fighting over the ashes of prestige fantasy dramas. Now that Game of Thrones is done.
Yeah.
A fight that Game of Thrones is going to re-enter with this prequel series about the what you call them?
Lannisters?
No,
really?
the dragon people, Targaryens. Yes, why did I forget that?
The dragon people.
There's a huge fallout for that. Lord of the Rings is about to enter that with their Amazon Prime thing, but all the major was providers are trying to figure out, okay, who now fills this void that Game of Thrones left. And so I think that Netflix was always aware of that coming up, going into production for this Witcher series. And so, like you said, I believe intends to continue on and not just let the first season, just exist on its own. And I don't think they're going to hedge their bets where they finish it in a way that would be okay, but hopefully would lead to another one. I think that they're going full. No, this is
like cliffhanger. This is the in between stories.
Yeah, we're going into this knowing that we're going to have multiple seasons, unless it just flat out bombs, and then we've got no choice. But I think that they're going to, because it's self-produced. They're not partnered with anybody on it as far as like money goes, so they don't need to appease some shareholder. Well, they need to appease their shareholders, but they don't need to appease some other company that has shareholders and be like, look, it made $1 billion zillion, so will you help us finance the second season? No, it's all their own money, and so they get to make the shots on that.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to continue on for sure.
Yeah, I hope it fills that void for a lot of people too, that like fantasy, that fantasy itch they need scratching. Because like I remember when Game of Thrones was on, just like
they're definitely going to be first to try and grab that spot, at least as far as like big ones go.
Yeah,
because the Lord of the Rings one doesn't come out until I think next winter, and the Targaryen Game of Thrones thing isn't going to be for like another couple of years at least. So they're, at least as far as like high profile properties, this Witcher thing is going to be the first one that tries to grab at that void.
Yeah. I mean, and I hope I really hope it does like fill the void too, because I know that they were trying to get some sort of like realistic fantasy, dark fantasy sort of appeal with even like shows that were like on the History Channel, that Viking show or whatever. Like I remember that show came out and it had like elements of realism because they were Vikings and they were like, fucking and killing and doing all this stuff, and just like in Game of Thrones, but and you never knew who was safe. And then there was that pirate show that like
Black Sails.
Thank you, Black Sail. That had this similar vibe too. That it was just like nobody's safe.
They were definitely cashing in on the hype that Game of Thrones brought up about like, oh, we can enjoy like a really dark universe.
And that's what I'm hoping that this will just be like, it's been out of everybody's mind for a while. It's not comparing it to anything, even though we're kind of realizing it is sort of comparing it to Game of Thrones, but like it won't be on at the same time, so it's not like people be like, well, I'll just go watch Game of Thrones, I don't need to dedicate to this new series.
It's next in line as opposed to an alternative at the time.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Because next in line, I think and it being first in line too, that's really good. Because I mean, other people I've been talking to, just like everybody seems to know about this, especially people that are in the gaming, gaming world at all. Like they all know that this is coming out, and there are tons of gamers.
They're because they have to putting out. There's commercials during football now.
Oh, really?
It's coming out here in 10 days.
Oh, yeah,
the 20th. So there is a big this is the final push for making sure everybody's aware of it. And then I don't have a Netflix account right now, so I don't know. But I guarantee you that you open up the Netflix application like 3/4 of America does almost every day, and that's the first thing that you see is upcoming The Witcher, starring Henry Cavill, that sort of thing. And so everybody does know about this. They're making a big investment for this series, and so they need to make sure that everybody knows to try and get everybody to watch.
Well, good. I mean, yeah, hopefully they have all their stuff lined up, and because I'm sure the people will be there to watch it. It's just a matter of I guess if they deliver, which seems like they did already. Like they got a good cast, and the trailer looked pretty awesome, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I didn't watch any of it. I saw the commercials. Like I said, there's commercials during football. But when that happens, that's like when I go to the restroom or I go get like another beer because I'm like, I don't want to see any of it. I just want to watch the show.
You plug your ears, close your eyes, and
right.
La, la, la.
Yeah. I just want to watch the show. I hate trailers. I hate things like that.
I was worried when I started watching the trailer that something might, spoil or give the ending, and I won't say anything. But I
just don't even want to see
like
the characters. I want the characters to be revealed as they come in the story. Like we're not going to see Yennefer for probably, unless she's the opening shot, which also wouldn't surprise me. We're probably not going to see Yennefer for like at least the first half of the episode.
Yeah,
I would hope not even until like the second episode. But I want to experience that as it comes up.
Yeah.
And if I watch the trailer, I'm going to see Yennefer, and I'm going to be like, oh, that's Yennefer.
Yeah, you wanna be able to figure it out, like,
right.
Oh, that's Yennefer, and then he says it.
Right. Dandelion.
Dandelion.
Come over here.
Yeah, I need to play those games. Yeah, I need to just go full fanboy.
Do it.
Okay.
Well, I guess that covers it.
Yeah, you guys know what to read. Finish the book.
Yeah, the last 2 chapters.
And you know how to find us at ears_stamps on Instagram and Twitter, and then dogearsandtimestamps@gmail.com.
Let us know if you're interested in just continuing the series.
We are.
At least for just one more book.
Yeah. Yeah, so just let us know. And yeah, well, we're going to hit the series too, so we're going to watch the show, and we'll be all...
At the very least, I'm definitely going to be reading the series just on my own.
Yeah, I think I am too.
I think depending on... I hope that... The only reason that I would hope that this show on Netflix is serialized and not dumped would be that would then give me time to barrel through the books,
yeah.
Before we started watching it for the purposes of recording episodes.
Yeah.
But it's going to be dumped. It's going to be dumped like everything that Netflix does, which is fine. That's the watch culture that exists on the internet these days. But we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
In any case, like we said, finish the book, find us on those things. Let us know what you think. If you have suggestions for other books for the next, because we've only got one more episode of this before we get to figure out what it is that we're going to read next, whether it is Time of Contempt or anything else. So let us know what you think about that.
Yes, please.
And we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We need to figure it out before next week because that's how it works, obviously.
Yeah. We could even hop back into an old series if we wanted to continue with the...
That's true.
The... you know who I'm thinking of.
The Gentlemen Bastards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, those boys.
I still need to finish Red Seas. It's ridiculous. Yeah. I've taken way too long on that. It was probably coming up on a year at this point. But, oh well. Anyways, I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Schaffer.
This is Dog Ears and Timestamps.